this thing. Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne. Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach.
My name is D Uncle Jr. and I go by the Consistency Coach.
And we are your coaches for Coach's Corner. As always, like I tend to say, if you are here and you plan to do absolutely nothing with this information that we're going to give to you or share with you, then this may not necessarily be the place for you. However, if you're looking to be a better version of yourself, to add value to the people that you know, love, and care about, and just continue to try to strive to be, to achieve extraordinary heights, then I think you're in the right place at the right time. Not only that, I believe that you are destined to be here and listen to the sounds of myself, the Mindset Coach, and my good friend here, the Consistency Coach. Again, I invite you to take out your pen and your piece of paper, because I think there's going to be another great conversation. So that being said, let me speak to my brother from another mother, the Uncle Junior himself, the Consistency Coach, Brother Garfield Martin. How are you doing on this day?
Man, all things considered, I'm repping the Cowboys. They did play the first game of the season and they did lose. So my tears have there you go, the big L. My tears have since dried up, and it's another day, it's another week. And whoever we play next, I'm looking forward to it. It's football season, it's high school football, college football, go Dogs, Roll Tide, whoever you support. You know what I mean? So my schedule has cleared up. I had a really busy last couple of weeks and stuff like that, and now I got I got a little bit of time to breathe a little bit, and then, like I said, it's football season, so this is like a great time of year for me, man. So I'm in a good mood, good spirits. It ain't as hot out there anymore right now, so man, with all of those things, man, things are good over here. What about you? The Dogs won their first game of the season.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is football season. I love this time of year. As for people who know me, they know that.
Mhm.
And in conjunction with what you're saying, all is well. I have zero. I don't even have a thing I can think about to complain about. And I think that's a good space to be in. Family, friends, everybody's good. I'm seeing in people's lives things are happening, positive things that are happening, um, and that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing when you can see potential in a person, and then they start to realize the potential that they have because they're starting to experience some of that. So I think that's a beautiful space to be in. And I get excited. I get excited about stuff like that because I like to celebrate the successes of other people. So man, I'm good. I'm content.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think all of that, in a big old pot of gumbo is what I am right now. So thank you for asking. Um,
Gumbo sound good. Good,
um,
good
yeah,
authentic gumbo, not that other stuff. Some good stuff,
yeah,
not the
well,
stuff out the can.
yeah, no, not the stuff out of the can.
Yeah.
Um, and as always, it's good to be here to share conversation with you. But also, and I think I can speak for the both of us, is always awesome to share in conversation with the Lavish Chat on social media. So that being
Mhm.
said, I just want to make sure that I welcome you guys to the show. Make sure that you get in the chat. Make sure that you share your perspective on each talking point. Ask questions, because you guys know we will make sure that we try to honor the questions that you guys ask. And oh yeah, and last but not least, if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you hit that drop down arrow beside that bell and and select all. That way that you know every time that we go live on this channel. Because I do believe that you will find value, especially if this is your first time. I do believe that you're going to find value in a lot of the things that we talk about, and trust me, there are several conversations in which we do so. So that being said, bro, do we have anything else we need to discuss, uncover?
Um, Not right now, I don't think. I think you covered everything. Great intro, man. Great intro.
I appreciate it, man. I'm excited, motivated.
Me too.
Um,
Me too.
oh, that said, I think it's about time to get this party started. What if your greatest act of service isn't what you do, but what you stop doing? Today, we confront the uncomfortable truth that 83% of us crave a legacy of impact, yet only 14% believe our actions actually matter. Why is this a staggering gap? Well, because good intentions aren't currency for change. They're often a silent saboteur. Here's what keeps most people trapped. If our intentions are noble, why do about 88% of us change makers abandon their missions within a year? And does quitting reveal more about our hunger for validation than our commitment to progress? We've all fallen for the empathy mirage, mistaking viral campaigns for victory or conflating donations with dignity. But what if the real work of impact demands dismantling the very systems we unconsciously uphold? From savior scripts that dehumanize those we claim to help to the burnout we wear as a badge of honor. This conversation exposes how ego hijacks altruism. We'll dissect the impact inertia equation, why silent consistency over performative grandstanding is the number one secret to transforming intent into legacy. So ask yourself now, does your help liberate or merely launder your conscience? Let's begin. Now, I know I said a lot during that intro, and it's a lot to unpack within the intro alone, but it's also something that kind of gets us started. And I think for me, I kind of like want to share um, a little bit about me as we get ready to get started because I thought good intentions at one point in time was enough. Like, and you will hear it in conversations, like especially if I do something and it offended somebody. And my initial response used to be, "Well, my intentions, I did not intend, right? Or my intentions were, or things of that nature." And I had to get to the point of moving beyond intent to impact. So when I moved beyond intent to impact, I had to consider the result of the intent on the individual before exercising the act. Now it took a lot of soul searching for me to actually get there. But it was a struggle. I'm just going to be honest, because at the end of the day, I heard a lot of people who would speak that way. I didn't intend to this and I didn't intend to that. And for you, I would like to ask this question to get started. Like, did you ever and I don't want to assume that you did. Did you ever have to have that conversation with yourself, like intent versus impact, or was it something that was taught to you at an earlier age?
Mm. I like all of that, especially the first of all, the intent versus the impact. I like how you went a little bit deeper. You've mentioned it before on this show and or on Hearts of Men on Friday nights.
Mhm.
But I think that for me, it's something that I kind of developed as I got older. I don't remember someone coming up to me and kind of laying it out like your intent versus your impact on that. It's something probably maybe kind of sort of may have been learned on these platforms, on these two different shows, because I literally just wrote it down again. I've heard it before. So the fact that I'm writing it down now and I'm vaguely remembering some conversations about you mentioning impact versus intent, I think that I know that it wasn't something that I learned growing up, and I
Yeah,
know that it's something that has been taught to me or that I'm learning as I'm continuing to grow and develop, into becoming, every day a better version of myself. So to answer your question, no, this was not something that I learned early on or that someone taught me. It's something that I'm developing and have been learning since I've been an adult over the last couple of years,
yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think that's pretty much the same for most people, unless they just had an awesome foundation to where the people in their lives taught them some very significant lessons that went beyond what the school system taught. But then it don't stop there, because once I learned the notion of intent versus impact within me, Now I got to figure out a way for it to expand and go without me and go outside of me. And that's kind of like what we're talking about when we're talking about legacy. Yep.
Mm, I don't know. The light bulb came on, but I don't know if it's dim or if it's bright.
Okay.
So, is intent more focused on self versus impact more focused on the other person? And here's why I'm asking.
Hmm.
If I'm going out there and I say, "Hey, you know what? I want to go out there and I want to help people. I want to raise money." So, my intent, it is to help people, but am I doing that egotistically? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Um, but when I'm thinking about helping people, is that more about, hey, some people don't have to be, up under the bridge, out in the streets, homeless, you know what I
Right.
mean? So do you think sometimes intent is more internal versus impact is more external and focused on something bigger or larger or greater than yourself?
So my initial response can be yes, but
But
it all depends on the intent. I think a lot of times when we hear intent, we want to give a blanket, and I'm not saying that this is what you're doing,
mhm,
but I think when we hear the word intent, we want to make it focus inwardly. My
mhm,
intent was, right? That was my intent. But then you got to look at how the impact is to somebody else. But if my intent is the impact, now I have to learn how to portray it as the impact, and it's not just being solely based upon the intent. So, like you just said, if my intent is to help the homeless people, sure, I can have an intent on helping homeless people, but if I'm doing it to in such a degree that they can't see that I'm actually trying to help them, then the intent is good, but the execution is bad, right?
mhm,
So the intent is to help homeless people, but the execution is that I'm helping them based upon what works for me.
mhm,
And I say it that way, and I'm just flatlining it that way. What works for me, because it's easier to understand when I say it that way. But if I want to go a little deeper, I may need to look at my communication efforts. I may need to look at my delivery efforts. I may need to look at what I am requiring them to do in order to receive the help. So all of those things come into play. So it's not just a simple yes, but wave top yes with these caveats, if that makes
yeah, I
sense.
like that. And even as you were speaking, you kept saying I and my intent, you know what I mean? So even and then that, when I did like this, that brought me back, that made me think about communication and delivery. So even when we're talking about, hey, my intent is to this, a lot of times we're saying my intent or I intend to. So I think maybe some of that and the reason why we want to initially go to I or internal may be just because how we use these words. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. It was just what I was thinking about too.
Nope, you're good. You're good.
Mhm.
I don't think you're off key with that. And I think that's a great time to bring this up because statistically speaking, 83% of adults want to leave a legacy of impact, but only 14% believe their efforts actually matter long term. And that's based upon a study of Gallup impact. And again, it's not complete. That's why it's dated 26. But it's still a work in progress. So you made a face. I'm
Yeah.
curious.
I don't know why I'm making faces today, man.
That's fine.
So, can you bring that back up there?
Mhm.
All right. So, I don't know where I'm at on this.
Okay.
All right. So, yes, I agree. 83%. I think most adults want to leave some sort of legacy or some sort of impact.
Mhm.
Um, I always wanted to do that, wanted to do that. And then there has been a shift. There was a shift to whereas hey, at some point, like I don't know anybody from 100 years ago.
Sure.
My dad died in 18. I don't think about my dad every single day. And I say that to say that at some point, 100 years from now, nobody's going to be thinking about me. Nobody's going to be, I'm not going to matter. So I don't know where I'm at right here because at one point I did want to, and I still do want to leave a legacy and an impact and different things like that.
Mhm.
But then now, and I'm just like, I don't know if leaving that legacy or doing all of this stuff is even going to matter. I'll use the analogy, talk about people who leave their kids in house or something like that, and they die and they leave their child, their three kids. You have three kids and they got a house and mom and dad and gone on to glory, and they rubbing nose and high fiving with Jesus now, and they back here, and one ain't got it together. So one want to live in the house because they broke. One is paying all the taxes every month. They want to sell the house, and then the other one want to put the house on the Airbnb. So it's like they may come to an agreement to where nobody does anything, and then they end up selling it. So it's like, well, what was the purpose of me leaving this house in the first place if I don't have any control over what happens to my legacy once I'm gone? So I'm in the I'm thinking about all of this stuff as I'm about to turn 50 and what to do with legacy and impact. But I'm just speaking from a financial point, not necessarily an impact on the knowledge and the information that you can share down. But I'm just talking about specifically the financial piece of legacy right here.
So you're in the 69%. That's what you're saying.
Maybe that's
Right.
where I'm at.
I mean, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think I think the last thing you just said was the answer I was going to give, because in most of our minds, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we hear the word legacy, we automatically equate it to finance. Legacy is
Mm-hmm.
far greater than that.
Yeah.
It is more so in line with, number one, values, family values. It's more so in line with family structure. It's more so in line with creating something that is lasting to where the family name does not dissipate. And when we don't do all of those infrastructural tasks that help to sustain the legacy over time, putting the right benchmarks in order to ensure that if this is going to happen, then this has to be the way it happens, right? So we don't do the necessary work because a lot of times people deem it as being difficult or they deem it as being expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what is the price tag of your name? You see what I'm saying? When you look
Mm-hmm.
at it from that point of view, now legacy planning takes on a whole different arena. And what we'll do, especially in today's age, we'll do something like go to AI and say, create let me create a legacy plan. And they'll get like a wave top. Listen, I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna be a very unpopular opinion. And I'm not against artificial intelligence. But you got to realize the intelligence that you're acquiring from that artificial intelligence was injected by somebody else. And somebody at some point is managing the information that you're getting. So if you really believe that artificial intelligence is giving you the cream of the crop, right? The creme de la creme of the information that you need, and I'm fixing to change my life based upon AI, not how it's gonna work. I mean, I really do. If it does work for you, then you just won the lottery. Congratulations. But think about it. Do you really think they would allow that to happen? Like really
For
make,
free.
yeah, just really let it sink in and ask yourself a question of that magnitude. Do you really think it's going to be that easy? No, it's not. And I think the same thing applies to legacy planning, because if we understand legacy in its entirety, legacy, if we do it right, gets you, your children, and your children's children out the rat race. Well, if that gets them out the rat race, why do you think that information is, number one, for free? Number two, implementing it for free. Number three, setting it up properly for free, right? That's not even a logical assessment. So I think that's the thing. And I'm glad you were honest about being at 69%, because there's a lot of people who fall in the arena of that 69%. And it's for a number of different reasons. A lot of it is what I just said, the difficulties in setting it up. But
Mm-hmm.
when you set it up and you set it up the right way, you have the right bylaws in place, you have the right managers in place, you have the right committee in place, right? You have the right benchmarks, so forth and so on. You have the right riders in place, then that bad boy really works. That's all I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying. So, I do agree with the statistic, even though I think it's still unfolding, right?
Yeah.
But and no buts. And if I look at the population of the people that I know, not because I asked them a very direct question, but just because I listen to the conversations that we have. Well, those conversations reveal that 69%. And I it's 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 interesting because you have, let's first look at the 17% that don't want to leave a legacy, right, of impact. And they
Mm-hmm.
say, well, my kids got to find their own way. They got to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a different perspective about those people. So I'm going to leave those people at the rest of the conversation I'm going to have. But then out of the 83% that want to, then you have the 69% say, man, this is just difficult. It's hard to do. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I do, as I am looking long term, I don't see how in the world I'm going to be able to do that for my great, great, great grandchildren who I have yet met. Okay. I get it. And I think for those people, and I'm not speaking directly to you, right? I don't want you to take it that way. But at one point in time, I used to be that. I had that perspective because I was looking at, you know, and I'm just going to be completely transparent. I'm looking at the money I'm bringing in, I'm looking at the bills I
Mm-hmm.
got going out, and I'm like, this is my reality. And if this is my reality, I need to make about $1.5 million a year to make this happen. No, you don't. That's the part I had to learn in the long run. No, you don't. You don't need to be a millionaire to make it happen. You just need to be intentional. You just need to be not just intentional, but you also need to be determined, and you just need to make a decision. And so, just by virtue of that, that in my mind moves me from the 69% into the 14. I mean, move me from the 69% into the 14%. Why? Because I believe our efforts really do matter. Now, again, intent, but now how do I project that to such a degree that it matters to them?
Mm-hmm.
That's the struggle that we're all going to face or are already facing, because that equates to, like we just talked about, communication, it equates to instructions, and hopefully those two go hand in hand, because some of us want to communicate with them, but we're communicating on a lower scale than what we should be communicating with. I refuse, and I'm just being honest, and I would take all four of my kids and line them up here, and I guarantee they agree to what I'm saying. I refuse to come down to their level to teach. I will come down to their level to connect, but to teach, I'm bringing them up to my level, because if they view me as a peer, then it's going to be very hard for them to take instructions from me, because the only thing they're gauging my instructions from is the level of my success. But if I keep myself at the stage, at the point of father, now they're recognizing that what I'm trying to teach them is for their own good. Now I've said a lot, bro, and I
Mm-hmm.
may have talked too much, but
No, you didn't.
your thoughts, your thoughts.
Because I liked all of that. And then, as you were speaking, I start, I'm looking at the title, Good Intentions versus Real Impact. And then even in this statement, it talks about long term. Well, I became a father at 19,
Mhm,
so I'm 19, depending on, I'm 19 years older than my oldest son. And then my last one, I had at 28, 29. So I'm looking at real impact. Long term, if I was to live to be 90 years old, my oldest son would be, was it 71? So theoretically, I've been watching him grow to 71. Have I been impactful with teaching him to whereas he should have his own life insurance, all of these things set up for his kids, blah blah blah. So that's part of the other reason why I'm just like the long-term stuff, but that also has caused me to think about the real impact as into right now.
mhm,
How can I help and support right now? He's 30 years old. He's been married about 10 years. He has, two daughters, 8 and 3. So now my thing is, does Tessa or Haley, do they want to do gymnastics? Can I support you financially in that? In a few years, do you guys want to take a trip or vacation, just for something to help, just bring you guys closer or something? You know what I mean? What can I do to help impact you guys' life right now? You know what I mean? And long term in the future. Because like I said, I'm probably that 69% that
mhm,
you're talking about, that I don't know what I'm going to be, what I want to do yet. And it's like, well, maybe I can do some of those things now. Maybe I can selfishly or unselfishly benefit from those finances. You know, maybe I can fly, we can pay for all of us to go on a Disney vacation or something. You know
Sure.
what I mean? So I like the impact long term, but I've also been thinking about how can I be impactful with some of those resources now versus, you know, once I kick the bucket, you know what I mean? I'm there rub noses and high fiving with Jesus, you know? So,
You're killing me with the high five with Jesus, man.
yeah, man.
No, I got it. I got it. I think the question that you asked is a not only a great question, but I think it's a question that everybody struggle with because it's like, you know, my grandkids are here. I want to enjoy my grandkids, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I'm gonna offer a perspective, if you will.
Yeah.
We kind of just talked about that, right? I'm gonna offer a perspective again, just to consider. I want to enjoy time with my grandkids. That's
Mhm.
me. That's what I want to do. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But then I got to ask myself, is that intent versus impact? Because at the end of the day, I want to do that with them because I want to create memories for them. Okay, great. And I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's for every person to resolve within their own mind. But again, when I point it back at me, again, that's more so of intent. But what is the long-term impact? So sure, I go to my 401k, I can make a $50,000 withdrawal right now. And after over the next 2 years, we just gonna make memories. I want
Mhm.
to do that. Now, my kids probably ain't gonna turn that down because they get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But when it's all over, said and done with, somebody got to pay the piper. Right? And that's the reality portion of the fantasy that we want to create. Because let's be honest, everybody,
Mhm.
we all want to create a fantasy like atmosphere in reality. So every now and then, you know, I don't care who you are, you can be the most, you know, idealistic person on the planet. But every now and then you kind of vacillate between reality and I would like to
Absolutely.
reality, and it would be so nice to. Everybody does it. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I think this exists. I would like to. It would be nice to. I think this exists to show you what is possible. But I also believe that we got to realize that this right here may not necessarily be tomorrow. That's the thing that we struggle with. And so,
Mm.
because this exists, that moves us to do something now, right? And I'm doing something now so that I can put it into action. But wait, we'll talk about all these different things. We'll talk about vision. We'll talk about goal setting. We'll talk about all those things. And then we'll destroy it all because we had a thought. And that thought was, I'm going to enjoy it because I worked for it. I got it. And I'm going to spend it on my grandkids. And all of us going to have a whole bunch of pictures and videos. And we get to sit back and come on over. And we just go, that's what we do. But again, it's not by happenstance, right? We have to understand the difference between the right activity that yields a positive future outcome versus an activity that in essence can put my child at their age in a position plus evolution when they reach my age. And I'm being honest, I tend to think about this. Like when I was 30 years old, what was I doing? Where was I at mentally, emotionally, physically?
Mm.
Then I look at my son. Well, I'm sorry, 31. Then I look at my son at the age of 31. Where is
Mhm.
he at? Mentally, emotionally, physically. Now we chose two separate paths in life. Now, because we chose two separate paths, I also have to ask myself another question. Was I where I was at the age of 31 because I was at a higher place mentally, emotionally, physically, or because of the path I took? And I promise you, everything in me say because of the path I took, not because I was at a higher elevation mentally, emotionally, and physically. And if I can conclude that in that scenario that I just positioned, thinking that it was the vehicle that got me to where I was at, not necessarily the me, the person in me. Now, mind you, because of the vehicle, I met some great people. And because of the great people I met, I attended some great organizations, churches, things of that nature. And we did some things together, right? But again, it was a vehicle. because I left home. I went to a different land. I started interacting with different people. And so we got to realize sometimes activity without thought, good thought, not just regular thought, because we think about everything we do. But activity without the right thought can be more detrimental than it is progressive. And so for me, I like to look at the progressive nature of the activity that I am going to do in the long term for the children that come from me that I will not even meet. It's not about my grandson right now. Don't get me wrong. I love him dearly. But his daddy got a job. I'm not talking about a job. Like he got a job when it comes down to my grandson. One thing I refuse to do, and people who know me know I say this all the time. One thing I refuse to do is to rob him of the opportunity of being a good father. Now, good is between him and his creator. And I'm not his creator. I was just a vessel. I get the opportunity to pour into that if he is open to that. One of the things that makes him open to that is him understanding that I am planning for his future, Shamir's future, and Shamir's child's future in the future. Now that's different because when we sit down, we ain't gonna have conversations about what he and his girlfriend talked about last night. Not unless you want some advice. We're gonna have conversation about legacy. We're gonna have conversation about like the wishes of the family because now somebody is going to have to be the ambassador when I'm no longer around. So again, long-winded response, bro, but let me get your thoughts on some of them.
It was my thought. And if I didn't pull anything out of that, if you in the chat or listening or watching this, if you didn't pull anything out of that, you have missed a whole lot. One of the biggest nuggets that I pulled out of there was talking about, you talking about you, like the I part, not necessarily the path. I was under one of those, I was always, probably until this conversation, my thought process always been I am where I'm at because of the army. I've always gave the army the credit for being in my situation. But I'm the one I decided to talk to the recruiter. I decided to go in the military. I decided to go to school. I decided to change jobs. Um, and I think that that can be very powerful for somebody that is watching this,
Mhm.
because a lot of times, people tell us that it's egotistical to, pat yourself on the back. But I think it can be sometimes detrimental to keep giving everybody else the credit for your success or your outcome too. And I can definitely say that that is definitely something that I have learned, over the last few years on these couple of panels. You know what I mean? Because I was always, when you are a person who wants to help and wants to give, and you grew up in the church, and it's always about other people and impacting and being impactful to other people and being intentional about helping people and all these different things like that. I think sometimes we tend to forget about ourselves. As men, sometimes we always talk about how we don't practice enough self-care. And I think this kind of sort of um falls under those same lines. So I think that, just overall, just learning that it is okay to acknowledge the fact that the person in the mirror also has something to do with the success or where you are in life now, not just the path, not just the military, not just everybody else. So I thank you for saying that and then reiterating that back into my life. For some reason, that was really impactful for me, and that really that really went that really, I want to say, hit a nerve. That really went deep, but that really did something. That was really powerful to me. So, and like I said, I don't know if somebody else got that piece out of it or got something else out of it, but I'll say right now, we only 35, we 35 minutes in. I don't even think we ain't hit the
We,
first
we
question.
haven't. We haven't.
So
And I'm
I
okay
am
with that.
enjoying all of this.
Yeah, I'm okay with that because at the end
Very
of the day,
impactful.
I think the setup is probably more important um, right now
Hmm.
than, and maybe there's a part two. I'm open to that as well.
Same
But
here.
I also want to make sure that we do not miss one of the most important things, because you can line 100 people up and ask 100 people to define success for them, and you might
Mhm.
get 99 different answers, right? Maybe. But I also, when you look at path, you look at decision, which you will always be a decision maker when it comes down to whatever it is that you're going to do with your life. I do not want to eliminate divine design, because if I'm not necessarily recognizing divine design, then I am missing the most influential part of this life that I'm actually living, in my opinion, right? Because sometimes I can give myself way too much credit for the grace that I received. Because trust and believe, I don't care who you are, you can look back over your life and said, I've done some things that I knew I deserved to be punished for, but I was not punished. I and I use this term, and I hope I use this phrase, and I hope it makes sense. I kind of got away with it, right? Um, and so that's a thing to where I can look back and be extremely appreciative and humble at the same time, because there are going to be times where I'm gonna have to look at my son, I'm gonna have to look at my daughters, I'm gonna have to look at my grandson and recognize the same level of grace that I received back here when I made bad decisions should be the same level of grace that I extend up here when I look at the bad decisions that I made. And so that's why I put that last statistic up there, because at the end of the day, within our legacy campaign, there has to be a process to behavioral change within the family. And if I don't have that pre-scripted, already designed to where they are going to go through it, all of the young adults that come after me, that they're going to go through this process of behavioral development. I say it that way, then I am missing a big piece of what legacy campaigning is all about, because it's the name that's important. Whenever you hear the Dwyer name, it should mean something. Whenever you hear the Martin name, it should mean something. And so, how do we ensure that the name does not get tarnished moving forward? Well, we create behavioral development within the legacy developing campaign, so that now we know that the people that are coming and being developed in this legacy plan, they're going to be impactful in society. We don't even have to question it, because we know that number one, they're not going to tarnish the name, and number two, they're going to go forth with like they're going to extend themselves from a servant's perspective, which is rooted in love. And I think that's key. So I'm not taking away from anything you said. Like,
Mhm.
sure, there are decisions that I must make in life, but there was some grace that I received in life. And that same level of grace has to be now moved forward into my life when I interact with my children and my children's children. Do I necessarily, drop the hammer when they go out there and spend $1,000 on something ridiculous? Maybe not. Maybe I need to look at it like, well, the reason why they spent $1,000 out of, out of the legacy, I say it that way, is because there were not parameters set up to where you had to quantify where this money is being used now. So I think all of that is in place. And again, I have, like you said, we haven't even gotten into it yet, but your thoughts.
Decisions are important. Decisions determine can determine the impact on your life, short term and long term. Um, Long time ago, when I was in Arizona, I had a pastor, and he used to one of the things he taught us was about just being obedient when you hear from God. So with that being said, I'm going to go off script a little bit, and I'm just going to be obedient. Um, I just think that whoever someone is listening to this podcast right now is dealing with something that's like something that they thought that they got over. And I think they thought they got over for a long time. And then that whatever it is has reared back up. So I'm here to just tell that person to whatever it is, stay on your grind, stay on your hustle, whatever it is you are focused on, and you know what you're supposed to do, stay right there. Do not give into whatever it is that temptation is. Leave it alone, because it is going to be very detrimental and very impactful to you if you decide to go down that path. Again, I'm done with it. That was all I had to say. And we can move on now. So
No, that was good. You know, I'm glad you did that. Because every now and then we need to be that open and honest and transparent when it comes down to something that we know came from a higher source. So I greatly appreciate that. Um, and I kind of want to go back to what we talked about previously, because I gave an example of me taking $50,000 out of my IRA, and I said I'm gonna blow those $50,000 and create memories with me and my grandkids over the next 2 years. But after those 2 years are over with, right? Would they even really notice? Like, what impact did that $50,000 have on their
mm,
life based upon, you know? And I'm just throwing some things out there based upon SeaWorld, based upon Schlitterbahn, based upon going to the Bahamas, based upon, you know, going to, I don't know, whatever. Like, what would they even notice? And if not, which I know the answer has to be no to a certain degree. Not saying the memories don't exist, right? But what would they notice?
it's a good question. I think I would like to, just me personally, egotistically, egotistically, I would say once my charitable gifts are vanished tomorrow, that people would still be able to see some of my impact. But I don't know. But again, that is me based off of me thinking that I've done this, and this. You know what again? And maybe I shouldn't be so focused on the intent that I may have been while these things, maybe focused on the impact. I'm thinking the brain is turning right now. The gears is
Mm,
moving. Um, After the Sea World, after all of that stuff, man, the Disney cruises, the $500,000 wedding, all of those things.
it's a nice wedding.
Very nice wedding. And a lot of people have done maybe not that much, but up over 10, 15, 20,000 easily.
Mhm.
And then it was nothing. They end up divorcing within a matter of months or a couple of years, you know. So, man, if the charitable acts vanish tomorrow, would the beneficiaries even notice? I think for a lot of people, I think people would think that whatever that they've done would be beneficial or impactful, or people would notice it or any of that stuff. But I don't know. I
Well,
think
let
a
me
lot of times those things are just going to be washed out.
let me repurpose the question if I can,
Repurpose the question.
because I think I think you're about to uncover something.
Okay.
So let me ask a better question. Is impact always noticeable initially?
No.
Mm,
Mm-mm. No. I don't think so. Um, you can you can give somebody an opportunity or a job, which can be very impactful.
yeah.
An opportunity. You may not know the impact of that 10, 15, 20 years down the road. You know, once that job produces a certain financial type of status, once that job produces a certain amount of skills to be able to provide for a better lifestyle for that, for his family, for her family, for the kids, for the generations, for the legacy. So yes, I mean, so I think that you can't always tell initially how impactful a nugget is. Like those nuggets that I got earlier today, I don't know how impactful those are going to be until later on down the road.
Mm.
Sometimes information, sometimes those seeds, those nuggets, those small things. A lot of times we don't see the impact of these conversations until years down the road, until months down the road. Sometimes it takes a while for those things to come full circle. Sometimes when those seeds are planted, you already know seed time and harvest takes a while for certain things to come about. So I think that yes, you are yes or no, whatever. You're not going to always see the impact of something initially.
Yeah, I think I'm in perfect alignment with your response. Some plant, some water, but God get the increase. And I
Hmm.
think, and I use myself as an example. I had no idea how impactful my mother making me read and study the Ten Commandments when I was a little boy. I hated it.
Hmm.
I despised it. I thought reading the Bible was like almost like the worst thing you could have done to me back then. But
Hmm.
then here it is, 40 something years later, right? Not only do I recognize the impact of it, I appreciate the fact that she made me do it. I appreciate the fact that she wouldn't allow me to wiggle my way out of that. Well, if that right there is enough evidence to me to be true, then that same principle, because remember, principles are microcosm of each other. So it doesn't matter where you put the principle, it has a responsibility to work in the arena that you injected. So if that principle right there is true, that same principle is also true on this side as well. So maybe I'm not necessarily making them sit down and read the Ten Commandments. And again, we're talking about children I have not yet met, right? I'm not talking about grandson, I'm talking about his grandchildren. The principle of the Ten Commandments which I know have worked back here, can also still work here 10, 15, 20, 45, 100 years later. And it doesn't necessarily have to be specific to the Ten Commandments, but it could also include the Ten Commandments. It could also it can include, like you mentioned, obedience, right? It can include the principles of obedience. It can include the principles of honor. It can include the principles of respect, purpose and packaged in such a way that they digest it at a young age, and it might be a homeschooling program that is within the legacy program that teaches them the life skills that they actually need in order to be a awesome version of themselves and impactful in the community at young ages. So I asked this question because I think, number one, in this world where we know that there are systems at play that make it very difficult for people to even think about this, to even think on this level. I think it's important for us to look at, number one, going back to principles again, because principles matter to me. Going back to principles, like a good man leaves a inheritance for his children. But the issue is we equate inheritance to dollar. It's not just limited to that, because like you said, there has been a lot that has been placed in this thing over the years. I need to be able to get that out. Like if I close my eyes tomorrow and I have not figured out a way to take this and and inject it, like push it forward to like my great grandchildren, then I have done a great disservice. So I think that's important. Now, the question becomes how? How does this, in conjunction with the things I have stored up and are still working to store up, how does that become the legacy that we put forward? That's the challenge for every person to encounter. And again, I have a plan, right? Um, and, and I'm not, I would absolutely talk more about it. Um, but I think that's the thing. The thing is that we have to move out of the notion to where this life that I am living is lived from a selfish perspective. And that I have to ask myself a very difficult question. How am I serving the people that I know, love, and care about? And how are we serving the world?
The first thing you started talking about was you mentioned your mom in that last statement.
Hmm.
And then the last thing you talked about was serving.
Hmm.
We are so in sync right now, and it is ridiculous, and I freaking love it. Talking about growing up, I remember you talking about impact again. She made me sing on the choir, um, or do usher board, do something in the church. I didn't want to do that stuff. I didn't
Right.
want to be up in front of nobody singing on the choir. I used to sing in the choir, but I used to lip sync the whole time. Charlotte, and if you didn't know, that's what I used to do because I didn't want to sing. Now, when I got a little older, she did give me an option of y'all gonna do something in the church. So I decided to be on the usher board. I didn't understand the impact of that until later on down the road. What she was teaching us was servitude, to
Mhm.
serve. We are designed to serve. So again, when you started your conversation, you started with your mom and teaching you and principles, came all the way back around and literally ended in the last couple of words with serving. So I thank you. It is I'm in the clouds right now. I'm in cloud nine right now, brother. Like I don't even know what else to say right now. I'm enjoying this conversation selfishly, and I know people are being impacted by this conversation today. And I know that's part of the word and the title, but I really think that this is a really good conversation today.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think because I know I mentioned systems previously,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that because I don't want to gloss past that
Mhm.
like you didn't say that. And
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 shout out to
and it's
Charlotte Jordan
shout out to
and
Miss
all the
Charlotte,
moms.
all the moms
Good.
out there, and the dads too.
I'm a
Doggone it, we ain't
coach.
gonna
Yeah.
leave y'all out there. We're gonna shout out to all the parents out there,
Yep.
grandparents too, because
Grandparents
they
too.
had Grandparents Day last week. I promise you, I'm still in limbo about what even is that, but whatever.
Mm,
I never remember Grandparents Day growing up, but hey, it's a
me
thing now, so
neither.
it is what it is. Um, it's I mentioned systems. There are systems in place that make you feel like legacy is far fetched. In fact, I'll go a step further. There are systems in place that make you feel that legacy is only for rich people. And there's a lot of people who really do believe that legacy is only for rich people. And I'm the first person to tell you that it's a myth. Now, we'll talk about why and how it's a myth later. But I want to get to the other side to where being that we look at legacy creation, some of the fear that exists in legacy creation is like entitlement. And so the issue becomes is that within the space of entitlement, another word for entitlement is privilege, if it's just in case anybody did not know. And I think a lot of times privileged poisons progress, or even if there is no process, then privilege becomes the outcome. And when you become privileged, it poisons progression. What is it? The Vanderbilts, right? The Vanderbilts, they was doing something similar to this, and then at a certain point, it ran out because they didn't have a progress or didn't have a process. Um, I think it's the Rockefellers who also did something like this, but they did not run out. In fact, not only because John D. Rockefeller created so much value that when he created this system, it existed, and from my understanding, might be still existing like 7 generations later. Um, so I think that's important. Going back to the Vanderbilts, I think there's a news reporter that's on TV right now. Not this very minute, but he works for CNN. And Anderson, I can't remember his name. Um, white hair guy on CNN. Somebody's gonna put in the chat. I know it, but supposedly he is a Vanderbilt. But anyway, we have to get to the point to where we break down the systems, not attacking the system, but the effects in which the system has created in our heads. When we can break down the effects of the system on on what it created in our head, I think now we realize that, oh, well, this does not have to be limited to rich people. It can be for everybody. And then once we do that, now what we're doing is we're liberating the family name from the system that kept it in bondage for years. But the issue is that as long as I'm dependent upon the system, I'm still in bondage. And so why is that? Because I'm gonna go to here, Dr. Edgar Villanueva. He said, charity soothes the giver's guilt. but justice dismantles the giver's power. Now, I want, especially those people who are out there in the YouTuber sphere, Facebook sphere, Instagram sphere, and any other sphere out there, I want you to kind of let that sink in for a second. Charity soothes the giver's guilt, but justice dismantles the giver's power. Some people are only providing aid, and when I say people, you have to read between the lines of what I'm saying. Some people provide aid out of the long-term guilt of what has been done years ago. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So that aid is there for the sake of that. But justice is available in order for you to dismantle the power that it has over you. So my concern is that within the family dynamics, we don't exercise the justice that is available to us. And then we end up passing down the need for charity from generation to generation to generation to generation. Your thoughts on that?